This week, the head of New York State's public college system spoke to lawmakers about this fall's reopening process and the steps to keep students and staff safe. However, some in our community say nearby SUNY Fredonia isn't doing enough to combat COVID-19. Jody White, an alumni and former employee of the college, says that the college is not taking into account the possible impact reopening will have on the small village of Fredonia.
An increased population could potentially overwhelm the limited number of healthcare facilities in the Fredonia area if it were to cause another mini outbreak of some sort. By making this switch, the Fredonia grocery stores, shopping centers, restaurants, bars will not have a huge influx in the number of patrons each day.
Now, White is one of several new petitions published online, and she's calling for the college to forgo an in-person fall semester and host classes only online. However, for some students, online classes can be a challenge. Joining us live now is Elizabeth Hahn, a senior at SUNY Fredonia studying biology, who sent a letter last week to the college and governor's office calling for a safer reopening. Elizabeth, thank you for taking time to speak with me today. I appreciate it.
Of course, thanks so much for having me.
Well, first off, in the letter you sent to officials, what specifically are you asking them to do?
Sure. So we decided to write this letter, which now has 933 signatures from our Fredonia students, parents, and community, when we learned that the SUNY Fredonia reopening plan contained no plans to test students prior to or upon arrival to campus. So we know that the currently available evidence and guidelines shows that allowing untested individuals from across New York State and the country to condense on campus could potentially pose a great potential harm to the larger Fredonia community. So what our letter asks for is to test all students, faculty, and staff for COVID-19 prior to their arrival and to undergo pooled or individual testing for residential students, both at the beginning of the semester and periodically throughout the semester to prevent asymptomatic or minimally symptomatic individuals from spreading the infection. We believe this is extremely important because the CDC currently estimates that 40% of individuals affected with COVID-19 are asymptomatic, and the chance of transmission from people with no symptoms is 75%.
Now, I know some have called for the school to forgo in-person instruction altogether. For you, do you think that's a feasible option, or are you more focused on reopening safely and getting back to class?
I think that reopening safely is something that's very possible to be done with the proper measures. Right now, unfortunately, the current plans do seem rather inadequate. I think another option is always going completely online, but I do think that many schools are modeling very good techniques to reopen safely, and I hope that we can do the same.
Now, I know that's a big challenge for a lot of people because regardless of the virus, many say life has to get back to normal at some point. For you, what does that normal look like? If you were talking to the dean of the school or the president, what would you say?
I think normal is something that unfortunately we just won't be getting next semester, but it's important to realize that it won't last forever. My normal certainly includes seeing my friends, going to all of my classes and labs, not really having these worries of getting sick or infecting others. But this semester, we all have to work together to ensure that we keep everyone else safe.
Now, SUNY Fredonia has launched a new initiative called Fred Strong, which it calls on everyone on campus to be responsible by wearing a mask and participating in other healthy habits. How do you think that this initiative will be able to make an impact and what that impact will be on your fellow students?
So far, I think that the Fred Strong initiative is very good. I think it's clear. Now the test is to see if my fellow students and myself included will follow along with these guidelines. I think the public health measures of what Fred Strong is trying to achieve is very good, and I really think it's possible for us all to do it, but we have to accept what is happening and be mature about our decisions.
Yeah, and I imagine that's probably going to be one of the big things to get over. A few weeks ago here, we saw a spike in COVID cases where health officials attributed that to large groups of young people gathering on Chautauqua Lake. Are you concerned with your fellow students ignoring those rules and continuing to gather in groups without the proper protection?
Yes, it is a large concern of mine, but I'm also hopeful because the majority of the signers on the open letter that we drafted are students. So I do believe that if the students who feel strongly about protecting the public and ensuring safety make their voices heard and set a good example, that it is possible for all students to keep our society safer.
I've heard other schools around the nation are coming up with disciplinary tactics to further enforce things like mask wearing. Specifically, I know a school in Erie, Pennsylvania has really tightened down on saying if people aren't going to wear their masks, there will be consequences. For you, how important is the enforcement, and what can the school really do to enforce things like mask wearing and social distancing?
I think that some enforcements will definitely be necessary, but overall, it will depend on the decisions that students make based on their personal morals and the responsibility that they feel towards our society. But I do think that some disciplinary measures could be effective.
Now, the semester is scheduled to start Monday, August 24th. It's shorter this year because of COVID-19. The last day of actual face-to-face instruction would be November 20th, and then remote classes could continue on into December for some. It seems like the school's kind of working on this hybrid plan of getting students back to learning again. Looking at that and what they've done, what do you think of the plan? Are you confident that you'll be safe going to class this fall?
With the current Fredonia guidelines for reopening, I do not feel as though I will be safe, and that is why we are so hopeful with all the signatures that we have on our letter. I'm hopeful that the components in our letter are put into practice in some form, and I believe with that additional step, I will feel much safer going to classes.
So finally, what's next for you? Is there a response that you're expecting from the school? Have they got back to you yet? And if they don't, do you have any plans to try to push a little harder to get them to implement better contact tracing and actually testing of students?
Right, so we should be hearing back from the administration any day now. Myself and the other co-authors of the letter met with the University Senate and the United University Professions. We received a really great response from them, and we are currently awaiting the university's overall response to what they will do in regards to our letter.
Yeah, certainly then we'll stay tuned. Elizabeth Hahn, a senior at SUNY Fredonia, joining us today. Elizabeth, thank you very much for coming on and speaking to us. We appreciate it.
Of course, thank you for having me.